Wednesday, March 20th, wake up. It's Damon and Larry. It's good to see you once again. Larry, kind of a slow couple of days for the 49ers. Some things possibly, though, being set up. And, of course, our first inkling anything might happen contractually in the NFL are clues and hints picked up off of Instagram. So that's where we begin this morning. How you doing?
Good morning. What's going on? Well, they do have, they got Josh Dobbs since we last spoke. So we got to talk about that, too.
We will. And in getting Josh Dobbs, we avoid Zach Wilson, which means we never have to talk about that again. Thank goodness.
that topic is come and gone.
It did. It didn't last very, very long. I got to tell you, if I seem a little distracted or rattled, Larry, so while you get up in the morning, I have no idea what you do before you sit down, but I'm guessing it's, shower, shave, comb your hair, grab a little something to eat and sit down. For me, it's much different. I got to get up early. I got to shower. I got to get two kids ready and off to school. I got to drop off my wife at the BART station and come home. Like I do an awful lot from 8 to 8:25 before we sit down and do this show.
Been there.
I nearly killed a man this morning.
I
nearly killed a man this morning. There is a few right on Ocean Avenue. There are a few days of the year where the sun and Ocean Avenue's geography just so perfectly aligned that either coming down Monterey Avenue at night or up Ocean Avenue in the morning, it's blinding. Like you cannot see. It's legitimately dangerous to be driving a few days a week because the sun is so in your eyes. And I had, my visor down. I'm Heismaning the sun as best as I can to see where I'm going. And I get to an intersection. I can't even see the red light, green light. And if not for Jillian going, stop the car, I probably would have killed somebody's grandfather this morning. And I'm a good driver, man. I'm a conscientious driver. I'm an aware driver. My eyes are always up. My hands are at 9 and 11. I'm a careful driver.
So maybe we should change the title of this show from Wake Up with Damon Larry to Slow the Fuck Down.
That or Get the Sun Out of My Eyes. I mean, it was like security had a mag light just right in my eyes. It was so blinding. It would have been like manslaughter, but I don't think I would have done jail time based on the angle of the sun. But I nearly freaking hit a guy this morning. And there's not a lot of mornings in my life where I can say, yeah, I almost ran someone over, but that's what I almost did this morning. Thank God.
You need to invest in that flashlight that's like 100 million times stronger than the average flashlight. Have you seen the commercials for those?
Yes.
I mean, it lights up the entire West Coast.
Seriously.
You need that flashlight.
It's like the light that used to come off the top of the Luxor. It's absolutely blinding. You can see this flashlight from space. I mean, it's I know that light. I'm impressed by that light.
I am too. I'm always tempted to call the 800 number, and for like $9.99 you can get a second one.
Totally.
That's the thing. I mean, that's the beauty of the game. I almost, twilight at night or early morning in certain times of the year can be very hard to see. I almost hit a guy in Golden Gate Park when I was in high school coming back from lacrosse practice. Just didn't see him. I was coming down the hill. It was 1988. It was like right about this time of year, March, the twilight, and it was just incredibly hard to see. And I just didn't see the guy. And he was like jogging. And I was like, oh my God, I almost killed you.
Well, I mean it. Like
it's a terrible feeling.
I'm always, how does that pedestrian get hit? Well, today I found out like how a pedestrian almost gets hit. I was blinded. And the chat is absolutely right saying that, Damon, if your hands are at 9 and 11, no wonder why you're driving funny. No, I mean 11 and 2. That's not where your hands are supposed to be.
10 o'clock, 2 o'clock.
10 o'clock. Okay. 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Either way, thank God this show begins without me having killed someone this morning, Larry. If people thought we were a little late without me doing that, imagine what this would have been had I done that. So
it would have been a very difficult broadcast to coordinate, and it would have come across as insensitive.
It would have been, especially there I am. I'm in the intersection, and I'm using my my iPhone to go live with you for Wake Up, and I'm being processed at San Francisco, central booking for manslaughter. But there I am breaking down the fact that Brandon Aiyuk, he does kind of look like Mike Tomlin, Larry. What? God almighty. Mike Welch says that he drives with his knees at 6 o'clock. That is normally where they are. Indeed. Knees at 6, hands at 10 and 2, knees at 6. Welcome everyone.
I saw a guy the other day going through downtown San Francisco in drive time on his phone, smoking a cigarette, riding a bike. So you're probably all right.
There's a lot going on there.
There's a lot going on there.
There's not a lot of steering going on at that point, I would imagine.
Smoking a cigarette on your phone, riding a bike through a city.
Either way, we're here. We're on the air.
We made it. We made it.
Like and subscribe and live a long and prosperous life. Thank God I didn't kill somebody. Seriously, I could have killed somebody this morning. Anyway, didn't. No harm, no foul.
Could have, though.
Could have.
I almost did it the other day. I was driving in the right lane down Treat Boulevard in Walnut Creek. There was a guy right by De La Salle High School who was on a bicycle. And I get it. Everybody's very serious these days. You and I rode bikes as kids, but we didn't ride in the street. We rode on the sidewalk. We didn't wear a helmet. Now you got to wear a helmet. But it almost tells these people that they're cars. They're not cars. It's a 3-lane road. It's dark as hell. De La Salle's stadium lights were on. So you get the brightness of the stadium lights right there. So you're really riding in the dark. And this guy's in the far right lane, and I'm in the far right lane just going to go get some gas. And I came up on him, and I seriously couldn't have gotten more than 15 feet away before I'm like, what the hell? No reflectors, no anything, wearing a black jacket, driving with a helmet on, but you're going to get just plowed from traffic on the right-hand side. Luckily, I saw him in time and stopped. Otherwise, that guy was gone.
Well, look, I'm a big believer now that we've rearranged so many San Francisco streets to include a bike lane, that if you're riding a bike and you're not in a bike lane, you should get a ticket. Just like if you find a car in a bike lane, like if we find a bike in a car lane, that biker should get a ticket. Like they have paved green pathways all over San Francisco for bike riders. And, I've never seen more than like 2 bike riders ever use one of these lanes. We are not Denmark. We are not Amsterdam. We are not going to become a city of bicycle riders, but we've made room for these people and they still don't even use it. It should be illegal to drive your bike anywhere but the bike lane now that we've got one every other block. Anyway, enough of that. Everyone's alive. Thank goodness this morning.
JW says Larry's elite spatial awareness does not translate to free throws. That ain't right. This kid could go to the line and make 2 if I really had to.
Yeah, when the pressure's on, you never know. You never know.
Tomorrow's the tourney. We'll be acting like we know teams that we know nothing about.
Let me tell you about Long Beach State. Long Beach State, Larry, take them. Put him in the Final Four. No, okay. So
start arguing about Iowa State's press and, why is Iowa State not pressing here? Things like that.
I always think that the very first sports talk radio host on Thursday who says, my bracket's busted should go to jail. I hate that show. My bracket's busted.
If you want to see people sprint away from you at a party, start talking about your fantasy team or your bracket. If you start talking about your fantasy team, oh, dude, I mean, I've got 3 wide receivers. I've got Justin Jefferson's backup because, Jefferson's hurt this week. People are just like eyes glazed over. And then if you get into the second segment on your fantasy team, they're literally like, how do I get out of here?
Yeah.
By the third sentence on your fantasy team, they're like going to run away from you from now on.
One of the best sayings I've ever heard was, hey, your fantasy team's a lot like masturbation. I'm glad you enjoy it, but I don't want to hear about it. I really don't. No one's interested. Larry, let's get into why we're here to begin with, and that is
what are we doing here? What are we doing here?
What would you say it is you do here? Well, we have the fastest growing show coming out of the Bay Area. That's what we do here, and we do that because we try to give you everything in the amount of time that fits into your day, not into our show. We're not trying to pull you deeper into our show. We're trying to fit into your day. So let's streamline this bad boy and begin with, as always, Niners headlines.
Let's do it.
The Steelers are interested in a trade for Brandon Aiuk here, Larry. This is coming from Andrew Filipponi of Pittsburgh's 93.7 The Fan. The Steelers are looking to work out a deal with the 49ers for Brandon Aiuk. Now, Brandon Aiuk has approached Mike Tomlin, at least on Instagram, saying, people are saying we look alike. You do a little side-by-side comparison. There is some Mike Tomlin, Brandon Aiuk facial crossover for sure. This is not, you really got to look at it. There is some facial look-alike between these two guys. So if that has anything to do with Brandon Ayuk's choice, and he wants to play for a coach that looks more like him, Mike Tomlin looks a lot more like him than Kyle Shanahan does. There's no doubt about that. But Kyle Shanahan has put Brandon Aiuk in an incredibly profitable situation because his chemistry with Brock Purdy's obvious. It's evident. It's easy to see. It'd be a shame to have that chemistry removed from Brock Purdy in such an important year for him. Ayuk's 1,342 receiving yards, a career high. It's his second season passing the 1,000-yard mark. The Niners obviously exercised his fifth option, but this is the land of I'm not playing for a one-year fifth option deal now for a player of Ayuk's ilk. And apparently the Steelers are interested, more interested than the Jacksonville Jaguars appeared to be interested about this time last week.
Well, it's interesting. The fact the Steelers show interest is not surprising. Mike Tomlin, it's time for Mike Tomlin to start winning playoff games again. They brought in Justin Fields. He's the future, but they brought in Russell Wilson and he's the present. And I get the feeling that Mike Tomlin, despite all of his regular season success, could be on the somewhat hot seat, and it's time for them to win games. And if you look at their receiving core, Calvin Austin, 2022 draft choice, George Pickens, 2022 draft choice. The rest of the receiving core doesn't have hardly any experience. Their most experienced wideouts, Van Jefferson. They don't just need a number one receiver. They need a number one receiver who's ready to contribute to winning right now. So there's some urgency there. So when you see them, and they pick, they pick 20th overall. And the mock draft I have them, I'm looking at right now from Draft Tech has them taking Brian Thomas, a wide receiver from LSU at 20. So I'm sure they're looking at things going, oh, wait a second. Why would we take Brian Thomas and take a chance at 20 when we may be able to trade 20 to the Niners along with maybe something else and get Brandon Aiuk? And then if you're the 49ers, would you make that move? I think the Niners have a number in mind. They've said all the right things when it comes to Aiuk. We love him. He's our guy. We want him here long term, blah, blah, blah. Then Ayuk's camp has come out and said, we're not going to sign till after the free agent wide receiver, all the free agent wide receivers sign. So there's going to be a whole new market, and there's already one starting. I mean, look at the guaranteed money that Ridley got. The AAV that Jefferson's going to get is going to be huge. And Aiuk was a second-team All-Pro wide receiver. So he may command 30-plus million, but their number might be 26 or 27. Like, we're not going beyond 26 or 27. So, while I'm sure the Niners mean what they say when they say they love Aiuk, and I'm sure that there are these other teams, Jacksonville at 17. Supposedly the Niners asked for Zay Jones in 17, and Jacksonville said no. Really? Find that hard to believe. Zay Jones in 17 didn't get it done for Aiuk, but maybe that's true. And maybe the Steelers view Aiuk more favorably and are willing to give more than the 20th pick. But I think it's going to take more than the 20th pick to get Aiuk.
A 20th and a third rounder, a fourth rounder,
or a player,
a 2025 pick or selection, maybe. Again, David Bonilla, you had it, Larry, on 49ers Web Zone reported that the Jaguars were interested in trading for Aiuk, but the Niners asking price was the number 17 overall plus a player. Now, the player wasn't identified in this article. You say it's Zay Jones.
Right. That's what it came out. It came out in a different article that it was Zay Jones and 17, and Jacksonville was like, no. Well, you know what? If that's true, it shows that the Niners have, some interest in moving Aiuk, because they've already formulated a price tag that I think is, I don't know. I mean, is Zay Jones? Well, if you said Zay Jones, I would say journeyman.
Yeah, I mean, not offensive, not a game changer either. He's an NFL player.
Yeah, who's been on like 5 teams.
Right.
So I think, I have to look that up, but he's been on a bunch of teams. And I liked him in college, but this is Brandon Aiuk. But the 49ers, I don't think they feel like Brandon Aiuk. I mean, they've picked a price, and I don't think they're going to go more than $1 million or so beyond their price tag. And if their price tag is $26 million and he wants 35, then you're at an impasse. Or if his price tag's 27 million and he's at 30, 31, you might be at an impasse.
If I were an NFL player, and maybe this is, NFL players don't think this way. If I were an NFL player, I wouldn't be worried about a single detail other than guaranteed dollars. Annual average value. I know that it does matter to some guys. They want to wear the crown of, best, one of the top 5 paid guys in my position, blah, blah, blah. But if I were Brandon Aiuk, I would just be starting with a $50 million guaranteed over 3. That's what you just saw, a player who's not as good as you, who isn't as proven as you. Calvin Ridley just got $50 million guaranteed over 3, and it's a 4-year deal for him. So Ayuk's negotiating point would have to begin at $50 million guaranteed, you would think, from the 49ers. And another sort of, your asking price is coming into focus based on the market fluctuating around you sort of headline has come out in the last 24 hours. The Cleveland Browns, who traded for former Broncos wide receiver Jerry Jeudy just a couple of weeks ago, Jerry Jeudy just signed a 3-year, $58 million extension with the Cleveland Browns. So there's that number again, $50 million. Now, that's not guaranteed, but this is definitely the neighborhood that Brandon Aiyuk's shopping in.
Yeah, what would you say the first number was? What, 16.6 million per year, 3 years, 50 million roughly
for Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, so that would be 16.6. That's if you're saying average annual, or you're saying guarantees.
Yeah, I wouldn't care about the average annual value. Who cares? Just guaranteed dollars is the only thing you're guaranteed. That's the number you should be focused on in any NFL contract, I would think.
Yeah, I think 50 million guaranteed is probably beyond their budget for Aiuk. So, I think there's a better than 50-50 chance that Aiuk gets traded, but it'll probably be on draft day. It just seems like, why are the 49ers, we can listen to them or we can watch them. And if you watch them, they're interviewing J.C. Latham, Fuguwaza. Who is it? What's the other offensive tackle who's really good? Isaac Fuguwazi. Is that who it is? He's really, really good for Oregon State. So, that's the thing. They're interviewing offensive tackles that are Talieisi Fuaga.
Yes. You've been nailing that name for the past couple of weeks. When you start going over it, I'm like, there's another Samoan whose name I got to get right before I say it out loud.
Yeah. Talieisi Fuaga and J.C. Latham, they're both projected to go between 10 and 20. The Niners pick at 31. They've interviewed both those guys. So, obviously, and they've interviewed some of the top wide receivers as well. Do they try to do a Buckner-Kinlaw thing where maybe they wind up with Brian Thomas or Malik Neighbors or somebody like that? I really don't like Rome Odunze that much, so that would be a major concern. Troy Franklin, not a huge fan. So, I mean, if they trade Aiuk and wind up with one of those guys, I think that's a major risk. But Brian Thomas from LSU might be better than Aiuk, maybe even significantly better.
But is he going to be better than Brandon Aiuk in 2024? And that's the only thing I think, obviously with any draft, you want to be taking a long view, not only who is this player today, but who will this player project out to be. But if you're the 49ers, I think you're playing a little bit of a different game. Here's your Super Bowl window. Win it in 2024, or you're back to the drawing board in ridiculous ways. So Brandon Aiuk, to me, brings the 49ers closer to winning a Super Bowl this coming season than any receiver, regardless of upside, that they could possibly go out and draft. And we also have the entirety of Kyle Shanahan's coaching career where we haven't seen bupkis produced by a single rookie receiver, Brandon Aiuk included, under Kyle Shanahan. So you would just be totally going in the wrong direction in a gotta win it all year with finally a quarterback who gets a normal offseason to really work out with guys on his team to develop that special chemistry. And you would want Brock Purdy and Brandon Aiuk even having more chemistry in year 3. And they had incredible chemistry together in year 2. And it would just be a shame if the receiver you've been looking for years, you finally got him, and now you got to say goodbye. Like, I think that the 49ers offense was pretty damn good last year. I would like to see that reduplicated as much as possible. And
I hear you, but it's also
look a lot different without Aiuk.
It's a cap, and you gotta, this. I don't know if it's about anything more than the cap. I mean, teams have to make tough decisions. I'll tell you the other one that I think is definitely viable is when you look at the signing of Dobbs and all the Niners had, let's say they had 10 needs. Well, they've solved like 6 or 7 of them already in the draft, in the free agent market. Now they have like 3 needs or 4 needs. And I could definitely see them trading multiple picks to Denver for Surtain. This is there's a right and wrong time to trade for the veteran edge piece, but the right time is when you're in your Super Bowl window and you've been just kind of hit and miss in the draft. That's what the Rams did. They said, you know what, we're kind of hitting and missing in the draft. We'll trade high picks for Stafford and Ramsey, and we'll win a Super Bowl. And because there's not a lot of mystery when you're trading for, Pro Bowl veterans. Well, this is the draft where they need offensive line and they could use a couple other pieces. Other than that, their other, primary need is a true number 1 corner. And you might be able to get a true number 1 corner by trading, a second and a third round pick in this year's draft, maybe a conditional pick in next year's draft. You could make that happen. So, and still replenish your O-line. So I'm eager to see what they do, because I think this is the year where, especially after watching what McDuffie and Snead did to the 49er receivers in the Super Bowl, this is the year I could picture Shanahan and Lynch saying, you know what, we need a true number 1, and we're going with Surtain, and we'll make the investment of draft picks to get it done. I think I could see it this year.
I'll tell you, if you're going to subtract a guy like Brandon Aiuk, you better be adding someone who's going to make up for the few points per game you're no longer averaging with a better defense that is getting the job done. Because Brandon Aiuk, I just think, deeply affects what this team's passing game is more than any other wide receiver on the team. He deeply affects the running game. I believe he's the best downfield blocker in a team where that is paramount for the running game to be successful. And I would just, again, I would be very, very anxious to see what next year would look like without Brandon Aiuk. And I would not be anxious to see what next year would look like if you just brought it back as is, that offense, with that offensive line, with the receivers that we know about. I would run that back if I could. And like you said, the cap is a mean thing. It makes you make tough choices, but that would be a really tough choice. It really would be.
Well, it does seem like Aiuk wants out. I mean, he hadn't tweeted in 11 months, and his first tweet is one to, Mike Tomlin saying we look like.
Shanahan is rough on his wide receivers. I don't think it's very fun playing for Kyle Shanahan at that position. Debo originally wanted out before he was given enough money to want back in. But he did want out. He was unhappy with the way he was used, with the way that he was being regarded, with the whole running back thing. So Kyle is tough on his guys. That's not an opinion. That is a fact. Yeah. And I think that he rubs guys down a little bit. And maybe that is happening with Brandon Aiuk. Again, he went on Instagram, tweeted at Mike Tomlin saying, they're saying we're twins. What do you think? So Brandon Aiuk openly flirting with another NFL team's head coach. That is a sign that he might want out. And there's a price point that, might be the sign that brings him out of town after all. Let's talk about a new face coming to town. As you said earlier, Josh Dobbs, who really is a player, Larry. Last year, I remember even talking about this with you. I found an awful lot of respect for Josh Dobbs last year. He was just put in a couple of bad situations with very little time to get right. He quick studied playbooks, and he went out and he won on Sundays, and he got the locker room to like him an awful lot in Arizona before he got shipped to Minnesota. In Minnesota, they quickly liked him. And like all backup quarterbacks, the bloom comes off the rose, and when you're out there for too long, you start getting exposed. There are reasons why guys are backup quarterbacks and other guys are starting quarterbacks. You can never really expect to have much success if you're asking for more than 4 or 5 games out of a backup quarterback. If the 49ers had to ask Josh Dobbs for 4 or 5 games, I bet you they'd get through those 4 or 5 games with a 500-ish record. I think that they would do well. I like Josh Dobbs. His teammate likes him. His coaches like him. The interviews that I've seen with the guy, he comes across fantastic. Josh Dobbs is a Niner QB2. I like it.
Well, it's weird. It's like if you saw him play Dallas, if you saw him play against the Niners at Levi's early in the year, you would say, oh, yeah, you kidding me? I can't believe this guy was even available. If you saw him play the Bears on Monday night late in the year where he threw 4 interceptions,
it's bad.
You'd be like, this is the worst quarterback I've ever seen in my life. So
but that's the nature of being a backup quarterback. It's there with you in one moment, in one scheme, and by the time you get to that next game, it's gone.
Yeah, I mean, his nickname is the Pastronaut. He's an aeronautical engineering major. He's really athletic. He's a good dude. But, the bottom line is he's played 14 games in the NFL. He's 3-11. So, I don't know. I mean, I'll say this. I think the veteran route, I was hoping for Carson Wentz, but I think the veteran route probably makes sense over the rookie route. The rookies, you're really rolling the dice. And, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, any of those guys, even Fields, all those guys really badly need to play. And I don't know that you need a room where your backup quarterback badly needs to play.
Right.
Is a good thing for your starter necessarily.
Right. Deep down inside, he's going to say all the right things, but an injury to Brock Purdy wouldn't be the worst thing that ever happened to my opportunity. So you don't want that guy in the room.
It's just especially when you're so wed to Brock as your number one guy. If this were a year ago and you weren't really sure and you wanted to take a flyer on a young veteran that potentially could beat him out, then go for it. This year, I thought it made more sense to go with the veteran. So I was thinking Carson Wentz, maybe Ryan Tannehill. Instead, they go with Josh Dobbs. I'm fine with it. It's a 1-year deal for $2.25 million. The Niners maintain that they have the youngest or the cheapest quarterback room in the league for another year. And it takes another option in the draft off the table, and now you can focus on, your O-line and corner and a couple other needs, and that's pretty much it. So overall, I think it's probably a good thing. Their quarterback room is complete and defined. It's Brock's your 1, Dobbs is your 2, Brandon Allen's your 3, and there'll be no movement in that hierarchy. So overall, I they could do worse.
Yeah. Again, I don't know if the X marks the spot is a challenger to the throne backup quarterback was out there, and I'm not even sure you wanted to bring that guy in. Again, you said Brock is so now permanently entrenched in the role. You don't want a challenger in there. You want someone who, God forbid this guy get hurt, can give you 4 or 5 starts. And asking for a quarterback, a backup quarterback, to be better than can give you more or 4 or 5 starts is almost an illogical ask. Like, there's a reason why that guy's not a starting quarterback. There's a reason why he was available to you at the price you got him for. So, any team that is on their backup quarterback for a longer stretch than just a couple of weeks is by definition sort of screwed anyways. And it really doesn't matter what else you got going on, because you're in trouble in that moment alone. But I do like Josh Dobbs. I think he's going to fit well in the room, wear beige and blend. He's not going to stand out. He's not going to ask for too much attention. He's not going to command any disrespect for anyone to better himself. He's a good kid. He's a military kid too. Got to like military kids. They're brought up the right way. There you go. So there is the kind of quiet 48 hours worth of news. We got a Brandon Aiuk to Pittsburgh rumor that everyone's talking about, and Josh Dobbs is now in that quarterbacking room. A few other pieces of NFL news, Larry, concerning one of them, a former 49er. Did you see that Chase Young has signed a 1-year, $13 million deal with the New Orleans Saints? Obviously, the trade in the middle of the year, I don't think you can say it didn't work out, but it didn't work out as well as anyone on the 49ers wanted it to. It was a no-brainer to rent Chase Young for a Super Bowl run. You did get to the Super Bowl. He did not appoint himself well in the NFC title game, did appoint himself well in the Super Bowl loss. But, neither of us were surprised to see the 49ers fall out of love with Chase Young after his jogging play in the NFC title game. 1 year, $13 million with the Saints. I think that makes sense for them. He's going to have a neck procedure and is going to miss some of training camp. So didn't know about that until I read about it this morning. But Chase Young, New Orleans Saints, what do you think?
Good for him. He's only 24, but I mean, the bottom line is, he didn't go hard all the time. I mean, when the Niners traded a 3rd-round pick for Chase Young, there was this big debate. Why was he available for such a low price? And then people said, well, it's just lack of character. And then I think most people viewed that as like maybe off the field character. And I think what we found out was it really wasn't off the field character. He was a pretty good guy. It's just that he didn't play hard all the time. His on-field character.
He wasn't disliked. He just pissed off coaches when they got the film.
Well, he's not the player that he was at Ohio State, but a part of that is due to injury, but part of that's due to kind of the mode that he's kind of put himself in, where he goes like about 75%. He doesn't go hard all the time. So that's it. And that's not part of the Niner culture.
So he's not like this show, Larry? He's not like this show? It doesn't go hard all the time?
No, he just doesn't bring it all the time. I mean, the guy's got, he's a cool guy. I like him. He'll wear some crazy bling. He'll pack a dip. He'll, shoot you straight, but he goes about 75%. And on the Niners, you got to go harder than that. And when you go 75%, you look really bad. And once it was on camera that he was going 75%, I think his days in San Francisco were numbered.
Well, again, we both pointed it out. We both did videos about it. We talked about it. The play of the Gibbs touchdown in the NFC title game for the Detroit Lions, where Chase Young is literally jogging to a place where even if he gets there, he's still not going to make a play. It's the worst defensive snap I have seen any Kyle Shanahan coach team put on film. That's how much it jumped out. This is the worst defensive snap of the last 7 years of football.
I mean, I asked Kyle directly. I said, "Hey, is this your culture?" He's like, "No, this is not our culture."
Right.
So once he said that, it was done. It was Dunsville for Chase.
He was lazy, Larry. He was lazy.
It was lazy. It was lazy. Let me tell you. I like Leonard Floyd a lot more. His production's better. His speed is better. His effort is better and more consistent. I think they upgraded dramatically there. So, I mean, I like Chase Young, and he can do it if he wants to do it. He just doesn't want to do it as much as he used to.
The Cincinnati Bengals signed Trent Brown, who's a tackle that you and I talked an awful lot about. Maybe the 49ers would be interesting in getting back in business with Trent Brown. I knew that he certainly didn't impress anyone with the Niners when he left. Part of the reason why he left and why they moved on, they thought he was a little lazy, but Trent Brown had played himself into a pretty good player in New England. He just signed with the Bengals. We told you about the Browns and Jerry Jeudy, 3-year, $58 million extension. Again, looking at the market for Brandon Aiuk. Anything a wide receiver signs for these days should ping on your radar. The Jets signed former Charger wide receiver Mike Williams. It's a 1-year deal with a max of $15 million. And another signing is, did you see that Jimmy Garoppolo has signed with the Rams for $4.5 million, but incentives could take him all the way to 12 if he were to play like a lion's share of the season for the LA Rams. So Garoppolo is now a Ram. What do you think about that?
I don't get that either. I mean, you just had Carson Wentz. I thought he really outplayed Garoppolo, at least in the games that I saw this year. I would have stayed with Wentz, but maybe Wentz wanted to move on. But Wentz, I believe, is still out there, and Garoppolo now is a home. I mean, good for Garoppolo. I think it's a weird decision by him, too, because do you want to play? You're going to be behind Matthew Stafford. Stafford plays unless he's really hurt, he plays. So I don't know.
I got to tell you, I'm not saying that Jimmy G is like a shirker or anything like that, but I don't think playing is his top priority at this point. I think Jimmy wants to make a really, really nice paycheck. And
in LA, you mean?
And he wants to be somewhere where he can be all that Jimmy Garoppolo is on a Friday night. You know what I mean? And I think that Vegas, he enjoyed himself. I think he's going to really enjoy himself in LA. He certainly enjoyed himself on Santana Row. He's so busy enjoying himself, he can't even text his team back in the offseason. That's how much enjoyment he's getting out of being himself. And I just think Jimmy's in his own business of being Jimmy. And there's nothing wrong with that. He's not a bad guy. He's not trying to subvert any team's success or anything. But, you know, you give Jimmy enough money to carry that clipboard right here at this point in his career, he's cool with that. I think so.
Yeah, which is part of the reason I don't want him on the I wouldn't want him, is that you're right. He is content to carry the clipboard, and he's not all about football. He's got other interests. He's got other things that are, he's more fired up about. He's kind of a guy who's just in the league doing his job, cashing checks. Not to say that there's no value there, but I think we all know what Jimmy is at this point. There's not a lot of special traits there.
No, he's an NFL. He's a professional quarterback. That's it. He's a professional quarterback. He can go in there. He can win a game. He can lose this game too. He's a pro. He'll handle the loss well. He'll handle the win well. It's Jimmy. You know what you're getting. And the 49ers weren't interested anymore.
Well, it makes no sense. I mean, It made no sense. You're going to bring him back into the room and force that on Brock as the backup, the popular backup who has 4 or 5 guys in the room that are his good buddies who they want to hang out and go to Warrior games together and go to Sharks games and, whatever. He was not ever going to be a fit, but good for him. He's already played his best football, and now he's on the backside just trying to cash checks and and stay out of the way. And you know what? Here's the bottom line. I mean, if the Rams are in a good position, if Stafford plays 10 games and gets hurt and is going to miss 4, this guy can come in and probably win 4 games. So
Mark Graves on the chat says, Damon sounded like a character on Seinfeld. Jimmy this, Jimmy that, Jimmy in third person. Got the Jimmy leg. It's a Jimmy. It's a Jimmy. He is. Thank you very much, Mark. Good.
Jimmy likes you.
It's the summer of Jimmy.
Jimmy thinks you're pretty fun. Remember that whole episode?
Yeah, absolutely. And you got the Jimmy leg. 36 days away from the NFL draft, Larry Krueger. I know that is one of your times to shine. You love the NFL draft more than most, probably more than anyone should. I'm going to let you get 2-3 minutes here. Just tell me what you think the approach should be for the 49ers in this draft. I mean, obviously, we're talking about needs and best availability and trying to predict what needs and who's available in a 4th round that could see 3 days of trading before of it. It's a little nuts trying to predict what could happen with hundreds of moving parts all over it. But what's your feel coming into this? With the first selection, no matter where it be in the first round, the 49ers select what position?
I mean, we can talk about all these other things, but if you're a real Niner fan, you know their history. They talk about a lot of different things, and then they draft defensive tackles. I mean, that's what they value. You get typically what you value in the draft. I would say the 49ers are going to target somebody that's in the middle of the second round and draft him at 31. My guess is it will either be Xavier Legette from South Carolina, the wide receiver who runs in the 4.3s and is 230 pounds. Either him or possibly a defensive tackle, as I said, Rook Aurora. I could see Rook being a Niner pick. There's always a chance somebody falls in their lap, but I don't think that's going to happen this year, but it could. And the guys that could fall in their lap that they would be interested in would be like Latu from UCLA, who's a great pass rusher, but he just has some medical issues.
He took over a game against Penn State in a way that I haven't seen a college football player, defensive player, take over a football game like that in a long time. So he is a good player.
Latu. And then Tyler Guyton is probably the offensive tackle, or Troy Fatanu, that could fall in their lap.
Guyton from Oklahoma is the guy that I got circled. I think they're going to be the pick at 31 if they stick at 31.
Yeah, I think most people would say Guyton, but I'll Amarius Mims, who knows? He's only made 8 starts. Maybe he gets drafted high on potential, or maybe he gets downgraded on lack of production. But that'll be my guess, is that they'll. But they're also going to be staring at a lot of really talented defensive linemen, like Jonah Ellis from Utah is a tremendous pass rusher. Mason Smith was a 5-star recruit from LSU. He's 6'5", 310. He's pretty imposing. A lot of people think he's going to be more of a second-round pick, but he's imposing. Michael Hall, 6'3", 290 out of Ohio State. Had the best pass block win rate, I think, of any defensive tackle this year in the entire draft. And then there's some sleepers. They've met with Max Melton, the corner from Rutgers, who I love. He's probably going to be a high second-round pick. They could trade back a few spots. Melton is great against the run. He's got 4.3 speed. I could see he's a fast climber in this draft thing. I could see his name climbing high. Aurora, I should say, after his workout in Indy. He could go really high because, you're talking about 295 pounds who's, worked out incredibly at an incredibly high level. So, and he played for Clemson. It wasn't like he's, some bum. Then there's Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky, who's a wide receiver, very Debo-like. And a lot of people think Corley's going to be a stud wide receiver. So if you said to me, make the short list, there it is right there. I would say Guyton at offensive tackle, Michael Hall, Aurora Rowe at defensive tackle, Xavier Legette, Malachi Corley at wide receiver. My guess is it would probably be one of those guys. The guy that I would pick here, I would be willing, if I were the 49ers, to trade like my 2 and my 3 and maybe next year's a pick in the top 3 next year to Denver for Surtain. And then I would have that number 1 corner off my board as far as a need. And if I'm the Niners, the guy that makes a lot of sense to me is Zach Frazier from West Virginia. He's the center for West Virginia, but he's a terrific center. I mean, this guy's 310 pounds. He's tough. He moves people in the run game. He's quite a bit of an upgrade over Jake Brendel. I think a guy like Frazier could be a plug and play week 1 starter at center and a real difference maker on your offensive line. So for me, I'm trying to trade for Surtain, but I want to keep that number 1. And if I get that number 1, I'd probably take Zach Frazier.
How about Joan in payroll making a mistake?
I would not take Joan in payroll.
What a weird story from Tom Pelissero that came out this week. He wrote that the 49ers will forfeit an original 5th-round selection in the 2025 draft and have their 2024 4th-round selection moved to the end of the 4th round behind the compensatory picks, so it goes from 131 to 135. And this action resulted from a league review that found the administrative payroll accounting errors at the close of the 2022 league year resulted in misrepresenting the club's cumulative player compensation. The NFL determined that the club would have remained under the salary cap at all times, regardless of the error, and that there was no intent to circumvent the cap. In other words, forensics accountants came in, looked at this, saw no detected tomfoolery, determined that no advantage was gained. So if it was just like an honest to God, oops, mistake from Joan and payroll, why the damage of the draft picks? Just, it doesn't matter that you didn't know it was a 4-way stop. You still get your ticket if you roll through it, I guess, but these aren't punitive. These aren't damaging decisions rendered against the 49ers, but they've been slapped on the wrist a little here.
Well, I'd push back and say they are damaging. I mean, you drafted Talanoa Hufanga and George Kittle with 5th-round picks, and now you've been docked that 5th-round pick. So, I mean, yeah, I think that's not good.
No, it's not good. Yeah, you don't want to lose a draft.
As far as Joan and payroll, I mean, isn't it Parag's job? Or I mean, isn't this on Parag? I mean, unless I'm reading this wrong, this is on Parag. And I would say it's significant. I mean, these teams view these draft picks as gold bullion. And to have, one taken away from you is a pretty harsh penalty. I mean, to me, it seems like a very harsh penalty. I mean, they ended the year with $5.23 million in cap room. So they would have been cap compliant at the time. It had to be less than $5 million, a $5 million error. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to say about it. I don't know. We're all kind of waiting for the 49ers to speak to it in some detail. I'm sure Shanahan is going to be asked about it next time there's media availability. It's like you lost a pick and you had another pick moved to the back of the round. Other teams are not having this. Obviously, there was some impropriety going on here. And was it self-inflicted? Was it an honest mistake? Was it a calculated mistake? We don't know.
If Pelissero's reporting like no advantage was gained, no tomfoolery detected, I'm surprised that they're being slapped on the wrist this hard. Also, you're right. Isn't this Parag's job? Joan in payroll is more legend than an actual person at this point. But it also, I think, shows you, Larry, just how much money is flowing through these teams and how, just because you're here in this multi-billion-dollar, a company, which is what every single NFL team is these days, you still have a bunch of people who can totally fuck it up with their own whatever mistakes that they make, and there is a problem. I mean, look at what just happened with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, that was like straight up fraud and embezzlement, but this sounds like a couple of $1 million might have been misplaced or uncounted or unrepresented in some ledger. It took Jacksonville multiple years to even realize, like, hey, we're missing like $30 million over here. It's just incredible the amount of money that moves through these NFL teams.
Well, and there's now gambling money. There's massive amounts of TV revenue. There's stadium revenue, which is not shared revenue. I mean, I wonder if this is in any way is tied to the league complaining about how many compensatory selections the Niners have been given due to coaching hires, minority coaching hires, and draft pick compensation. I mean, the league created this, these rules. The Niners are working within these rules. What are you going to tell them that they're hiring too many minority coaches?
Right.
You've got this program to reward teams that hire minority coaches. Now you're going to push back on the Niners and say, oh, you know what? You're giving too many opportunities to minority coaches and executives. So that's a bad look.
Right.
And then
that was my favorite part of the whole, they're getting rid of Steve Wilkes. Well, it's because Kyle's racist. But just the week before, Kyle had worked with and promoted so many minority coaches that other teams are complaining about compensatory picks. So which is it? I mean, come on, everyone.
Yeah, exactly. It's a ridiculous discussion to begin with. And then there's the formula for free agents, and the Niners are doing well in that, where they're signing fewer free agents than they're letting walk, and they're taking the compensatory selections. But maybe there are people that feel like the Niners have built up their team too much on compensatory selections. I don't know, though, but the penalty seems very extreme if it was an honest mistake.
Yeah, it just the fifth round pick going away. It's easy to sort of dismiss it because it's next year's fifth rounder, but you're right. They've had success in the fifth round, and a good player can come from anywhere. We do know that. We do root for Brock Purdy, so we do know that. Larry, I think that's all the 49ers news we can stuff into this episode and still get out in a reasonable amount of time here. Is there anything else that we didn't get to that pinged on your radar since Monday that you thought needed to be part of today's show that hasn't been?
Well, Sebastian Joseph Day is officially an ex-Niner. He signed with the Titans this morning.
Okay.
So he's no longer an option for them. Also, it sounds like Kittle and Debo are going to be on the Netflix show Receiver after quarterback did so well last summer.
Receiver, starring
starring George and Debo, and they're 2 of 5 receivers that will get some love in that series. Other than that, I think we're pretty covered on the Niner front. As far as all the topics of the day, I mean, they did sign Isaac Yiadom, and I think that's a nice little sleeper signing. The corner, the former Boston College corner who played with New Orleans last year. And now it's just a matter of,
do you think that shuts off the Surtain spigot?
It could. It very well could, because they're very deep at corner. They've got 7 or 8 corners now. And you typically carry 5 on your team. So maybe that does take them out of the Surtain waters, but I just kind of think that Surtain makes a lot of sense for the Niners. Especially, did the Niners learn anything in the Super Bowl? Or it's like, what did I learn? I learned that Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed were better than Debo and Aiuk. And to me, that's why Kansas City got over. Well, if the Niners learn the same lesson, then maybe they have interest in Surtain, because dominant corner play was one of the main reasons they lost the bowl.
And there you go. All your news on the 49ers that's fit to print, and we did it in about 54 minutes, so hopefully that fits well into your day. Just a couple of other things here, Larry, as we wrap up this one. Blake Snell is a San Francisco Giant. You and I have appropriately told Farhan to go screw a few different times here on this show. Now, with the addition of Blake Snell, it's amazing how one more signing can change the entire nature of an offseason. And all of a sudden, the offseason that wasn't has turned into a little bit of offseason that was for Farhan and the San Francisco Giants, because now it is the reigning Cy Young Award winner, two-time Cy Young Award winner, two-time ERA leader, and he's done that in both leagues, joining Logan Webb at the top of a rotation. And that's as good a 1-2 punch as any team in baseball can claim to throw at the top of a rotation. Logan Webb and Blake Snell's legit. They added a 4-time Gold Glover in Matt Chapman. They got an all-star DH coming off a 36 home run season in Soler. They added what they hope to be his Korean Ichiro, and they've got a guy who's actually hitting well in spring training and playing a good center field. And they could get Robbie Ray back in the middle of this season, and there's another former Cy Young Award winner who has shown up to help your pitching in some way, shape, or form. As we said on, Monday, a lot of teams are floating in that orbit between 70 wins or 90 wins. I would say the Blake Snell signing means they're floating in that 91, 92 win orbit. Like, this is a legit signing, Larry.
Potentially. Okay, first of all, he's from he went to Shorewood High School in Shoreline, Washington. So the Yankees offered big money, but the guy wanted to be West. So it came down to the Angels and the Giants, and he chose the Giants. He's had one of the weirdest careers anybody's ever had. I mean, the guy went 21-5 with a 1.89 ERA in 2018. He wins the Cy Young. Okay, he wins the Cy Young. The next year, he goes 6-8 with a 4.29 ERA. So, he's had a 21-5 Cy Young Award winning season in 2018. Then, as I said, 6-8 in 2019, 4-2 in 2020, 7-6 in 2021, 8-10 in 2022. And then last year, he goes 14-9 with a 2.25 ERA, makes all 32 starts, and wins the Cy Young again. So now the Giants are adding the reigning NL Cy Young Award winner. So that should make you feel good.
And he's a lefty.
But then you look at that, how he bounced back from his last Cy Young. If he goes 6-8 with a 4.29, there's going to be a lot of pissed off people. So the interesting thing is they did a projection on what they expect him to do this year. And this is what they project: 11-9 with a 3.28 ERA, 162 innings pitched, 125 hits, 200 strikeouts. So that's pretty good. It's not 20 wins.
Right, he's not going back-to-back Cy Young. He's going to
go back-to-back Cy Young, but he's a solid starter. And as far as the Giants are concerned, good for the Giants for doing in the middle of March or in late March what they should have done, months ahead of time. Now, did they save millions? I'm sure they did. And maybe this is all Boris's fault. But at the same time, the Giants bought their team for $100 million. It's worth $4 billion, and they waited until the 19th of March to round out their rotation. Why? Because to save, what did they save?
Well,
$1 million bucks, $5 million bucks.
I don't think they were in hot pursuit of Blake Snell. It just sort of fell back to them, and the option sort of presented itself.
Why weren't they in hot pursuit of Blake Snell? Can anybody name their fourth or fifth starting pitcher going into the season?
Right. Well, it was Tristan Beck, and then he got hurt. So there you go. I mean,
who the hell's Tristan Beck? He's never done shit.
Right.
And Dalton Jeffries, what's he? I mean, this team is going to charge, $500 for three people to go to a game this year. I mean, they owed their fans a little bit more of a representative major league caliber situation. Now, their offseason looks bad next to the Dodgers. It looks good next to the other teams in baseball. But I still think they're not deep enough offensively or pitching wise to get to October. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm rooting for them. It definitely makes their rotation a lot more legit. There's definitely a path to 90 wins, which means there's a path to the playoffs. But we'll see. We'll see where it goes. I like the addition because they needed it badly.
Yeah,
but I don't think it makes them a playoff team. I still think they need one more hitter.
Well, they're chasing a team that's already picked up the first win of the season. Obviously, the Dodgers, by the way, over in South Korea, beat the Padres 5-2 in a game that officially counts. Ohtani goes 2 for 5 with a stolen base. Mookie goes 2 for 4. Each had an RBI, and the Dodgers are officially underway. So, that's who you're chasing. But you're also trying to hold off, Arizona, who showed up in the World Series last year. You're trying to hold off a Padres team that is kind of readjusting. Look, maybe Bob Melvin was a reason that, Blake Snell was the tiebreaker. It was going to be Anaheim, San Francisco. He wants to play for Melvin again. I don't know. Hopefully he has a really good year for the Giants to work well at all this year. They kind of need everyone to stay healthy and have a career year all at the same time. And we'll see what happens. But I like the move. I'm glad that they made it. They certainly owed it to their fans, especially on a day where they began with the worst amount of PR any team could go out and buy. Like, however much money they will save by not bringing back Renel is the damage that they've just done from a PR standpoint would have been worth twice the price to avoid that. I mean, they just dragged themselves through the mud so unnecessarily. And, if you want to talk about Brian Copeland, who is Adam Copeland's dad, saying that he's got a contact saying that this is about racism and the Team Johnson not wanting to be in business with Renel anymore. Well, that's a terrible look. And all I can say is, she did work there for 24 years. So, I don't even know if you can make that argument. It's just, the whole thing seems petty because it feels like it's either about her color or the color of money, and neither should play in San Francisco. So the whole thing just sucks.
I mean, to be completely honest, I think that's a bullshit narrative. I don't believe that narrative at all. This is what I think's going on there. And I can just tell you, I have no sources, but I can, you said, how many years did Renel broadcast for the Giants?
24.
Well, guess what? In her 23rd year, she decided to criticize the owner of the team and who he devotes who he donates to politically. And he's entitled to donate to whoever he wants to politically. And guess what? You're entitled to say whatever you want about it. And he's entitled to fire your ass for saying it. So I don't think it's right. But at the same time, words have consequences. And I think there's other people that may find that out shortly as well. Who's got the power? The people at the top have the power. Charles Johnson has the power. Renel has been a good employee. She's good at what she does. And she's been good for years, but she chose this last year to rip her boss publicly for his political donations. And it's not about whether you agree with her or disagree with her. How many people in this world can rip their boss publicly and survive?
Right.
When my read on it is that Charles probably said, hey, guys, Renel ripped me publicly for donating to whomever. Let's when her contract's done, lowball her and she's gone. And that's probably what happened. Her contract came up, they lowballed her, she read the room, and now it's this, well, you can walk away and mutually parting in a happy way, or you can walk away bitter, but you're walking away.
But they knew it was going to be an unpopular decision. They made it anyways. They knew it was going to rub their fans the wrong way. Baseball's about nostalgia. She's the only voice that has ever come out of a PA speaker in that ballpark. It's had no other PA announcer since it opened.
She's been there. You can't say that, oh, man, they didn't give her a chance. She was there for 24 years. So
Oh no, this is
they
but
so
that's the
wait,
thing.
they're
Normally
not
after 24
entitled to
years.
walk away after 24 years. I don't think they should have. I think the timing's terrible. If it was me, I would have done this in November and be done with it. Instead, they're so getting led around by the nose that they do this 10 days before people are going to show up. Now it's going to make it uncomfortable for the new PA announcer. It's going to put the scrutiny on them. They're going to have this whole public debate that goes back and forth. But at the end of the day, it doesn't change the reality. If you go into your company and you take the guy whose name is on your check and you rip them publicly, you're probably not going to be there that long. So maybe it was a little bit of a heat check by her, and she found out that she's not going that good. But either way, the PA announcer is a non-essential part of the team. And I love Renel. She's great at what she does. But when you're taking on Charles Johnson, you're going to lose. So I would think it was a bad move by her, to be honest. And it's not really about, it's like Democrats donate to Democrats. Republicans donate to Republicans. So that's what he did. He's a Republican. He donated to Republicans. There are rich Democrats that donate to rich Democrats or to Democrat, politicians. You can't just be like, I don't like the politics. I don't agree with the politics. Thus, I'm going to rip you publicly and say that suggest that you're racist and this and that. I mean, I think it went a little bit too far, and Charles Johnson holds all the cards, and I'm sure he just told Greg from wherever he's, not being that involved with the Giants, hey, when her contract comes up, super lowball her, send her the message that we don't really want her anymore, and she'll walk away. And that's what's happened here.
Man, yeah, look, I think you probably have handicapped this thing correctly. And you're right on all fronts. Don't bite the hand that feeds you is an old saying because it is true. And she might have done that. I just think, though, that the PR damage and the lack of appeal that the Giants have in their own fan base, it's just another one of those, you're hurting how your own fans feel about you. And
just to interject real quick, it feels, Damon, now maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like the Giants have won on both fronts. They've won 3 titles, so they have the rings, and they've made millions and millions and millions of dollars and promised to make billions of dollars coming in the years that lie ahead. And when you're that successful, you don't really care about angering the fans or angering anybody because you
grow too big to fail, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, hey man, I got all the rings, I got all the money. You little people bitching below, you know what? You'll shut up and you'll eventually come back. It has this vibe like we're going really, really good, and we don't give a shit about you. And we don't care about your bitching and your complaining. We don't care about your op-eds in your formerly relevant newspapers. We don't care about your YouTube response or your media response or what Locked On Giants says. We control enough of our own media that we can kind of push you aside with our kind of hometown group of yes men, and there it is. That's what it is. So they don't really care that you're right. Do they look good? No. Is it a comfortable time? No. But at the end of the day, you got billionaires wearing multiple rings going, you know what? I really don't give a shit about you or your opinion.
There's some similarity here because you would think that the San Francisco Giants, being in San Francisco, the team that originated, an AIDS tribute day, the team that forwarded, Gay Pride Day, a team that has behaved publicly in a very liberal manner, would have that somewhere in their core. But the truth is that's performative to the owner's actual instincts and what he believes in. And Kara Swisher, you know who Kara Swisher is, right?
No.
Kara Swisher is she's one of the baddest women in media. She covers the tech industry. Kara Swisher is, she's maybe the single best journalist in America today. This woman is no joke when it comes to knowing her subject and dominating it in terms of covering all tech. And she just came out with a new book that's like #1 on the New York Times bestseller. She has a podcast called Pivot, which is just fabulous podcast. You get smarter every single time you listen to it. And she covers, like, look, when Facebook was invented and Twitter was invented and all these tech companies were run by younger, more concerned CEOs than the old companies, that it's going to be, they're going to do business differently. They're going to care more about the environment and their choices and the ramifications. And the very first line in her new book is, and it was capitalism after all. And that's what it was. No matter how much Facebook or any tech company tried to appear new agey, they were just trying to wring as much money out of every bit of stock price that they could. That's all they were doing. And we fell for the okie doke. They never really cared at all about anything. The same way China or Apple doesn't care about working conditions in China sweatshops as long as those iPhones come out at the price that they can sell them at. So there is, tell me what you're doing on one hand, but what you're really doing is over here. And I think for the Giants, we need to look at it that way. They can take all their panda hats and all their new and their pride pins and everything that they're doing, and they had an African American woman as their as their public address announcer, and there's all this inclusion, and look, Alyssa Natkin, they got a woman in their dugout and all this stuff. All of that is bullshit performance, period. They're just there to make money, and as much as possible. And if they can make more money by paying, as you said, a non-essential, replaceable voice coming through a PA system, they'll do that. Or maybe they'll do that out of spite over some political back and forth. But the San Francisco Giants do not represent the heart and soul of San Francisco. They represent the heart and soul of greedy billionaires who just want to shake you down for as much money as possible.
I mean, they do a lot of virtue signaling. They do a lot of, PC run amok kinds of moves. But guess what? They're not gonna, the billionaire owner of the team is not going to get talked down to by the PA announcer without pushing back. That's what happened.
Meanwhile, Larry,
you can't talk trash to your boss and keep your job. You just can't. Very few people can. I mean, if you really think about it, very, very few people can MF their boss in any way, upset their boss directly and intentionally, and keep their position. She did it. She's kept her position up to now. I don't know if she felt like she would be buffered by whatever, but she's not, and she's gone. And it's and now it's she's a pro. She's always had the words to be able to say what she wants to say. And now we're going to find out. Did she take some buyout, some big cash buyout, and she's going to make nice? And talk negatively through her friends? Or is she going to speak, not take the big cash buyout, not take the big landing, and say what she wants to say? It sounds like she's going to take the big cash buyout and say nothing. That's what I'm taking away from it. And having her friends in the media, of which I consider myself one, kind of argue her case publicly. And the only thing is, I would argue her case publicly if I knew more of the details, but I don't. So all I can tell you is that a woman who's really good at her job, worked for the Giant organization for 23 years. In those 23 years, she not one time took a shot at the ownership group. In the 23rd year, she took a shot at the number one biggest shareholder owner in the entire group, and she's not here for year 24. Draw your own conclusions.
She won't be making it to year 25. She was in 24, but 25. You're right.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. She's not going to. I believe she made those comments this offseason. She's not going to be the PA announcer for one game after those comments. Now, is that accidental? Intentional? I think that's intentional. I think her comments were made intentionally, and I think Charles Johnson is responding with intentional, you're out of here. And look, the rest of this is just
trying to mask it.
The rest of it is just trying to put smiley face on it.
They're going to name the PA booth after her. They gave her the single biggest bullshit title in the history of bullshit titles, public address announcer emeritus.
Well, you can't. As far as I'm concerned, though, you can't have it both ways.
Who thought of that? Public announcer emeritus? What the hell does that mean?
Maybe she deserves it. But here's the thing. I'd have much more respect if she said, go fly a kite with your emeritus. This is what really went on. Right. Or is she going to just be like, you know what? I'm going to smile and make nice. And I like Renel. I don't think Renel wants to war with them. But to me, you can't have it both ways. You can't be the disgruntled former, PA announcer who's beloved and has, you know what I mean? It just seems it's like you either have to be beloved and be quiet, or you have to speak up and not be so beloved. But you know what I mean? This kind of like, I'm not going to speak up, but other people are going to loudly speak in my favor. Well, what is it? Are you happy or are you unhappy? If you're unhappy, say it. If you're happy, say it. But to be unhappy and say you're happy for a buck after 24 years, I don't know.
You got nothing to lose now. You got nothing to lose. You can't lose your job again. By the way, Larry, isn't it great that we don't work for anyone anymore? Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that great about you and I and what we get to do now? We don't work for anyone anymore. Thank God.
Well, and you know what? There are people that do work for the flagship station that are calling it racist. So something tells me we're going to hear more about this, and we may see some other people fired before long. I don't think you can get too far down the road in a situation where you're partners with the Giants if your position is that Charles Johnson is racist.
I also think it is
your
not
public
an insane conclusion to draw the line of someone who goes out of their way to fund the most extreme positions. Again, it's not like, so your dad was a Democrat, but your uncle was a Republican. There is a difference in the world that we're now living in that, again, I guess she tried to point out and has paid a price for. Maybe we don't know.
Here's the thing on this. I don't give a shit about your politics, and I don't care if you care about mine. But at the end of the day, you can't be, so entrenched in your echo chamber that anybody who doesn't think along your same ideology is evil and now is going to be labeled as racist. And so, she didn't call it racist, but she called it out. And there are people that work for the Giants flagship station that are on their Twitter amplifying the claims that the Giants are racist, led by Charles Johnson. Something tells me there's going to be more people fired if those comments don't come down like really, really fast. I bet you anything the people who made those comments and are tying themselves to those comments probably get shit canned.
Good luck with that, for sure. For sure.
Could be an uglier mess before this thing's done. That's all I'm saying.
It's going to be a really ugly mess at Chase Center if the Warriors dump one of the Grizzlies tonight. And here's where we're going to wrap things up, Larry. They should be like, if the Warriors lose to the Grizzlies tonight, after they just laid down to die against a depleted New York Knicks team, if they're going to lose tonight, they should consider like refusing their NIT bid and should just say we don't even belong in the play-in tournament. If they lose to the shorthanded Grizzlies tonight at home, shame on them. Shame on them. They should not have lost to the Knicks. They let Miles McBride go 29 points on them in 47 minutes. Do you see that Thibodeau had 2 guys play more than 46 minutes against
you just lost to a Knick team that didn't even have Julius Randle.
Yeah.
I mean, the Warriors are 67 games into an 82-game schedule. They're sub 500 at home. They don't belong in the playoffs.
No, and they're still playing the war. We're trying to figure it out. We're still trying to get connected. If you ain't connected by now, this shit ain't going to happen. Here's what I would do if I were Steve Kerr the rest of the way. I would tell you, Podziemski, you're going back to the bench. We're going to go out on our shield. We're going to have Steph and Clay and Kuminga and Draymond, and I'm starting Trace Jackson-Davis the rest of the year. Andrew Wiggins, seriously, go park yourself on the bench. Go home. Go cry at someone's bedside if that's what you need to. Like, dude, Andrew Wiggins, dude, 2 for 9 with 7 totally limp-wristed points against the New York Knicks. That guy stinks. You know, I like guys who answer the bell. He doesn't even hear the bell. Like, we need you tonight, Andrew. Andrew doesn't care.
You know, that Knicks combo of Jalen Brunson and Miles McBride had a huge game the other night. 34 for Brunson, 29 for McBride. McBride hit some big shots down the stretch, too. So, you know, I mean,
see the game out of Trace, though? He's all I get this March. My Hoosiers aren't in it. I get Trace Jackson-Davis still playing for the Warriors. He went 9 for 9 from the floor, 19 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 blocks, 0 turnovers. This is your team going forward. It's Steph Curry, Trace Jackson-Davis, Jonathan Kuminga. Those are your 3 most important Warriors going forward. I really believe that. Start acting accordingly.
Well, and they're not getting anything from their starters. I mean, look at the Warriors starters in the last game. Curry gave him 27. Podziemski gave him nothing. Wiggins gave him 7 points in 24 minutes.
Draymond had 2 points.
Draymond Green had 2 points and 4 turnovers. So, I mean, it's like Kuminga gave you a little something. Curry is Curry. You know, they're asking Curry in the post game about these games, and it's just like there's nothing there. I mean, he's just like, you know, this is what Curry said. I don't know what the answer is. If we did, we'd be able to get ahead of it. Talking about the struggles at home, and then Kerr's like, just one of those nights where we didn't really get anything going from that starting group. So it's just, you know, they're pretty mediocre. You know, it's like Joe Lacob can talk a big game. He can say whatever he wants. He can say, you know, he can talk up anything he wants and do whatever he wants. You can't make this team a contender. You can't just say we are. I mean, the way he makes some petulant child statements. We are going to contend. No, you're not. No, you're not. All right. Self-made billionaire boy. No, you're not. So it's like, we will contend for titles. No, you will not.
Not this year.
I mean,
not this year.
Hey, Joe, Steph's 36, Draymond's 34, you know, Chris Paul's 38, Klay Thompson is whatever he is, 33, 34, something like that, 34. Wiggins is 29. Your team's old. There's all kinds of younger, better teams. You're not winning jack ever again with this group. Get it through your head.
And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way.
You can buy your own radio station. You can come on and tell everybody that they're wrong about how they pencil out the cap and this and that, and you know, strong arm people through Ray Ritter. But at the end of the day, you're not winning a title with this group, no matter what you say. So stop talking and start making, you know, creative ways to rebuild.
And the thing is, there's nothing wrong with this team not winning another title. They've won more titles than any group of Golden State Warriors ever has. The success has been almost longer than a decade, and very few franchises are ever awarded that. But this is over. Yeah, this is over. This is over.
And stop looking into the camera and looking into the microphone and trying to tell us that they're, damn good. No, they're not. They're not damn good.
By the way, Mark Graves says, well, Larry's never going to get that Warriors PA announcer job.
Don't want it. And here's the thing. It's Joe bought this team. He already had Steph Curry. He already had a lot of this in place. So it's not like he put this in place. So I don't want to hear about how Joe won the rings. Joe was there when the team that he bought that already had Steph.
Oh, look, there's really nothing to complain about in the Joe Lacob department, though, Larry. He is
there's plenty
the second greatest, at worst, the second greatest owner in the history of Bay Area sports. At worst, he's the second best.
Today, let's check back in 5 years. Let's see what they've won. Let's see how they're doing. Let's see where they are. I mean,
okay, so if he's won he's still won more titles than
he was in the right place at the right time. Come on, he was in the right place at the right time.
Sure, but what do you do when you get to that right place at a right time? Do you keep it on its tracks of success? Do you build an awesome stadium? Do you keep the money flowing? Do you keep it all together? Do you go into the luxury tax and spend more money on NBA than anyone has ever spent on NBA teams? Like
he's let his team grow old. He got nostalgic. He did not pull a Walsh. Let's get rid of him a year before their time. He's now stuck with old, expensive players and no real way to rebuild. That's why I'm saying you're saying he's a great owner. Today, lots of people would say that. Let's see where it goes from here. Because to me, a great owner will be able to take what they currently have, tear it down, build it up, and win another title. And I don't see them doing that. So,
well, let me tell you, there's no other Steph Curry coming. Like, what the key piece of any successful NBA team is have generational talent and maybe even more than one. The Warriors did get lucky. They did get that. And they kept it
took
together.
James Wiseman.
And then that's the thing. There are two moving prongs that have affected their outcome to land this the way that they wanted to or not. Kevin Durant going to Brooklyn and basically letting Twitter dictate his NBA career because it wasn't making a 15-year-old in Detroit not burn him down on Twitter every night saying, you pussy, you took the deal. He should have kept taking that deal, and he should have stayed with Golden State. And then they made the single worst draft pick in the history of the franchise in James Wiseman, right when they needed someone other than
who it sounds like Joe made that pick and won't really embrace it.
Well, Joe did make that pick.
Bob Myers said Joe really loves size. I think that was at the final presser. That was Bob Myers' way of saying that Joe demanded Wiseman, and Wiseman couldn't play dead. I know Christopher LeCourc says, laughing my ass off.
I wanted Wiseman.
Lacob is objectively one of the best owners in sports today. Let's see in 5 years. Do we feel the same way in 5 years?
What do you think? Do you think they're gonna strip the championships that have already won in the next 5 years?
No, I'm just saying 5 years from now we'll have 5 years of losing to have that perspective over it. I'm just saying it's the winning. He bought a team that had Steph Curry. That's like buying a team that has Jordan.
Right. I can guarantee you that Chris Cohan could have fucked up the team that Steph Curry was on.
I'm just saying, at some point, you got to keep it going. So is Joe going to be able to lean on this forever? I'm just saying, what Joe inherited a great team and they won titles, but Joe has made statements like, we will continue to win, but he's not actually making moves that assure that that's a reality. So at some point, he's going to have to be judged post Curry. And then we'll find out, is he a great owner or did he buy a team at a great time?
Wow, you're being really harsh on Joe. Look at this. You're feeling spicy this morning, Larry. I tell you what, he won those rings, but he inherited Steph. I mean, nobody wants to give Jerry Krause any credit. It's okay to boo Jerry Krause. Jerry Krause made a number of moves that contributed to the Bulls titles. Right. Well,
but he inherited Jordan.
Convinced, but he was also the guy who said, we got to get rid of this Michael Jordan guy. Could you imagine how everyone's feelings would have changed dramatically about Bob Myers if he were at the epicenter of, let's get rid of Steph Curry now. Let's make sure he is run out of town because we just don't want to pay him a dollar amount that he's still worth more than. Like, that's not.
It's a different approach. It's a different approach.
I don't think you can blame an owner for the actual bodies that show up. Owners create budgets and environments. Joe Lacob has created an environment in which winning can continue and be fostered, and he's got a budget that is literally the biggest, fattest budget in the history of basketball.
They're under 500 at home.
That's Joe Lacob's fault?
Yeah, that's his team. They're under 500 at home. You're saying he's awesome. They're 17 and 18 at home. That's not awesome.
Okay, well, I think you're taking a statement over here and applying it to the team that makes you sound like you're making a great point there, but I think that they're completely unrelated from each other, and that it's not Joe Lacob's fault that Andrew Wiggins plays like a fucking pussy most nights. If you're saying it's his fault that he paid him to stick around,
my point is just that Eddie D bought the Niners and drafted Joe Montana. Are you going to give Krause credit for the Bulls? No. A lot of people give the guy who drafted Jordan the credit. So all I'm saying is let's see where it goes from here. If they can win another title at some point under Joe's ownership, then the narrative changes. If they drift away and become nothing, as he's stating, we will continue to contend for titles, and it doesn't happen.
Quick question. Quick follow-up question.
There's no blame there?
Follow-up question. How many championships have the Chicago Bulls won since Michael Jordan retired?
None. The same number that the Warriors are probably going to win going forward with Joe. None.
Right. Well, the Golden State Warriors were never going to win anything ever in my entire life. That's who they were. The Golden State Warriors are one of the teams that I used to say, well, if you're ever going to contract the NBA, you should probably get rid of the Golden State Warriors because they don't compete. They don't matter. No one gives a fuck. They won't be missed. They're like the Atlanta Hawks of the West Coast. You're the Clippers with better uniforms.
I don't need you to lecture me about the Warriors. You showed up in 1995. I'd been rooting for them as a loser for 20 years before you walked into the market.
Right.
So don't tell me that the Warriors weren't good. I know the Warriors weren't good.
All right. But you seem to now have an owner that has done more to incubate and foster success, and you seem like the biggest unappreciative fuck in the world.
No, I'm just saying it's over, and he's saying it's not over, and I'm saying it is over.
Trade Steph Curry?
Is
that your move? Is that your next move? Trade Steph Curry because you can get more back for him than anyone else? Would you trade Steph Curry?
I didn't say trade Steph Curry. I'm just saying it's over.
Well, how do you get out of it then? How do you keep it going? If you're saying it's over, how do you start it again without trading Steph Curry?
You're going to have to do what you did originally. You're going to have to win in the lottery. You won in the lottery. You found Draymond Green in the second round. You drafted Klay Thompson. You drafted Steph Curry in the lottery.
Well, they just drafted Trace Jackson Davis. There's your next second round.
They're going to have to actually do it. I'm just saying this idea that like Joe makes these statements like we will continue to contend for titles. No, you will not. That's what I think this NBA.
That's what this NBA say. Joe, do you think you're going to contend? Probably not.
Well, I mean, how about just reality? How about just reality? How about just say the truth, which is we had a great run here. It's going to be very difficult to replicate. We hope to do it. It's going to be very difficult. That's it. That's all you got to say. Not we will contend. We will contend for titles. No, you won't. You're 35 and 32. You're under 500 at home. You're barely in front of the Rockets for the 11th seed, which would be the final seed of the play-in tournament. I'm just saying, pipe down, be a little bit more humble. You're not light years ahead of everybody else. You're just like everybody else. You stepped into an ownership group where you inherited a great team. They found ways to win titles.
Well, look, I mean, Larry, they were light years
ahead ownership of it because it wasn't all you.
They were light years ahead of the entire league for a while in terms of what they were paying, how they were playing. They are the team that changed the league. No one in the NBA is playing anything other than like the Warriors used to play now. It's like holding it against Apple that they don't reinvent communication every 5 years. You can only invent the iPhone once. You can't reinvent how people communicate every few years, the same way you can't reinvent the way basketball is played globally every couple of years. It doesn't happen. The Warriors caught lightning in a bottle. They sold it better than anyone else. They had an incredible amount of success with it than anyone else. They are the NBA's dynasty of our lifetimes that aren't the Lakers, the Celtics, or the Chicago Bulls. They are now worth more than any other NBA team in existence. And you're trying to C- Joe Lacob. Let's see how it ends up working out.
Well, if it's I didn't say C-. I'm just saying, I'm saying what I'm saying. Stop telling me what I'm saying. I'm saying they're not going to win anymore. That's what I'm saying. Is it that hard to understand? And if we're talking about money, the Giants bought the team for $100 million. It's worth $4 billion. Are we going to credit Charles Johnson and Larry Bear and the Giants ownership group? They've been incredible. Their thing's worth $4 billion. We could. If it's all about money, then way to go, Lair. Way to go, Charles. CJ, you're the man. The Giants have their 3 rings. The Warriors got, in a lot of ways, it's the same thing. I'm just saying it's over. It's over. That's all. And this kind of like, I'm not going to accept it's over because I'm the richest guy here and I'm going to tell you that it's not over. You can say that, but it's hollow because there's standings.
Hey, but there's also, there's a trade that might present itself a year from now.
Then a year from now, we'll change our opinion.
Okay. But I'm not going to wait for that year before I decide Joe is probably good at this. I think I've seen enough to know that he is good at this. There is no sustaining excellence in perpetuity. There will be ebbs and flows, and being a contender a few years from now is something that is as much a reality as the whole thing falling apart and them never contending again. If your whole point is, I'm not going to conclude anything until we see what the future looks like, you're not leaving any room for them winning more in the future at all.
It's going to be a while.
It could be. They don't make a lot of they don't stamp out Steph Curry's for everyone to have. There
are no shortcuts in sports. You have to draft your way to success. They're hitting, they're missing, they're hitting, they're missing. They had a nice draft this last year. They got a couple role players. I'm just saying we're light years ahead of you, and we will continue to contend for titles, and we will figure it out.
Joe hasn't said
it's just kind of like
Joe hasn't said light years in 7 years.
But he did say we are going to continue to contend for titles, and they're not really. So that's the part that I'm kind of calling.
They believe they get into any 7-game series, they can win it. I mean, and I guess you'd want your team to believe that too, even if it felt like bullshit. Anyways, there it is. What do we got in terms of chats today here, Larry? We got any supers to get into? What do we got?
We got 3 here. We've got JJ Raider. He says, ask JD to say that's a problem.
That's a problem. That is John Dickinson's catchphrase.
That's a problem.
That's a problem.
For the soundboard. Oli Kayus says, start looking up guys with 1 year left on their contracts. I think he's talking Niners there.
Yeah, I think he was.
Postman in Capitola says Larry's on fire today, and I'm here for all of it. I'm not on fire. I'm just stating that their run is over, and to try to pretend it isn't is not a good thing. Just lean into it. It's over. You're not smarter than everybody else. You are just like everybody else, and
so you'd be happier with the state of the Warriors if Joe Lacob tonight let everyone know it's over.
I mean, come on, man. I just want just state the truth. Everybody knows the truth. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay to be like, hey guys, we had an amazing run here and this run is over. And it's clearly going to take some time for us to put it back together. Be patient with us. Instead, it kind of comes across like, we're pretty damn smart over here and we delivered this title. And in reality, you didn't. You bought a team that had an awesome player entering his prime and you capitalized. And now you're taking victory laps. You did the stadium. You got the stadium and the stadium is yours. But the winning is connected to Steph. Sure. And it's like the same way that the winning was connected to Joe and the players. And it's their greatness, not yours. And we'll see. I'm rooting for them, but let's be real. I don't expect the Warriors to contend for a title anytime in the next 10 years. I really don't. But Joe does.
What happens if there is a one-off and they actually do have a year of contention, but they don't get to go to 5 consecutive NBA finals?
They did. It was called the Celtics title.
Then you'll be complaining about that. Then you'll be complaining. Oh, they used to go to 5 championships in a row back in so it's not as good as it used to be. Like, yeah,
Damon, you're talking to a guy who watched 20 years of bad basketball and did it joyfully. So don't tell me that I only need winning. It's the people that have become fans recently that only need winning. We'll see how many of them stick around. The people who were fans of this team in the mid-'70s and saw tons and tons of losing, those are the real Warrior fans.
Right. Well, they got priced out and left in Oakland a long time ago, right?
A lot of those people left. They didn't live in Oakland to begin with. They went to Oakland for games. Now they go to SF for games. I'm just saying that the fan that's been there since the mid-'70s is the Warrior fan. The fan that watched them win titles is probably, a third of those people are probably going to go switch to other teams and watch some other team win a title.
Larry, I think you're being a little tough on Joe Lacob. There's been an awful lot of winning on his watch. I was talking to Tom. I talked to Tate, too, and they both agreed that, there's been an awful lot of winning. There was not a lot of winning, and now there is some winning, and you're saying that they want to keep winning, and they're talking about keeping winning. Well, of course they want to keep winning. They're going to say all the right things, but you're not going to come out and say, I don't think we're going to win anymore. That's unreasonable.
Joe, I also took a lot of credit for the Niners going to the Super Bowl, and I probably didn't deserve it either. And Lowry banged on me then, so don't feel bad.
Folks, we're going to be back on Friday morning, 8:30, recapping what might be another move, getting you ready and closer to the NFL draft. It's Wake Up with Damon and Larry. Please hit like and subscribe. It was great having you here today. Larry, always a pleasure, man. Talk to you again on Friday.
See you on Friday. Peace. Everybody enjoy this great weather.